Hello everyone, GrayTech back for another video. This is going to be a topic video of the new Sun and Moon games coming out. You know, there are a lot of videos on the internet with a lot of different people sharing their thoughts of what they want in Sun and Moon, you know, what new features they want to see, and a lot of them, you know, are pretty much the same. I mean, people have slightly different opinions. But the reason I'm making this video is I have opinions that are just slightly different than most people's that I've seen anyways. So let me go into detail what I'm talking about. Alright, now I've been a strong Pokemon player for most of my life. I've played every single Pokemon game, dating all the way back to the originals, Red and Blue. And I played them all, you know, Red and Blue, Gold and Silver, Ruby and Sapphire, and Emerald. I played not Diamond, but I played Pearl and Platinum. I played Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Fire Red, Leaf Green. I played Black and Black 2. I played X and Alpha Sapphire, and I've beaten the game several times, so I have pretty good experience with the games. I hope I'm certified to talk about some of these points here. I want to just rattle off my first ones here that are pretty much the same as everybody else's, all the other videos I've seen. Pokemon following you. That was such a great feature they had in Soul Silver and Heart Gold. Any of the Pokemon up to Gen 4, you could have follow you. They all had their sprite designs. It kind of originated from the Pokemon Walk thing in Diamond and Pearl, and they expanded it for any Pokemon to follow you. Now, if they really wanted to, they could have done that again with the 5th generation of games, but because things were, the textures, everything was slightly different, that if they used the same sprites they did in the 4th generation games, they wouldn't have looked, you know, as real. So they'd have to do a little bit of a redesign, but if they really wanted to, they could. And I can really understand why they didn't have in the newer games, the 6th generation, because the entire graphical engine was a complete overhaul in the newer games. Everything was 3D. We weren't using flat 2D sprites anymore. It would have been a lot harder to do modeling to make all the sprites look like they belonged in that game. That's understandable. But, and I'm not entirely sure if we're going to see this feature again, because like I said, everything's in 3D in the 6th generation. The graphical engine is different. It got a complete overhaul, and it would take quite a bit more time to design 3D Pokemon images to follow you around rather than just quickly putting together some sprites. So, as you can imagine, that'd be quite a bit of a task. However, if they did end up doing it, it would make a lot of people happy, definitely. And, you know, having a few more extra things to say that the Pokemon can say, because, you know, in the games, in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, you could turn around and they would say something based on where you're at, you know, maybe expand on that a bit more if they end up doing it. And that would be pretty cool. But, again, I wouldn't expect to see this feature because it is quite a bit of a task to get done. So, but again, that would be cool to see that. Now, the next one I'm touching on is another one that almost everybody is saying, and it's quite obvious that this feature should come back, is character customization. I thought it was incredible in the X and Y games that you could change all the clothes on your character, the hair, everything. It was amazing. You could really make yourself unique to how you wanted to look. You weren't set with a common character sprite like you were in all the past games. You could actually look like who you wanted to be. You had a dynamic range of options, change what you look like, the clothes, you know, everything. And that would be a great feature if that would come back. And I know they can do it. I mean, I don't know. See, look, I don't know if Sun and Moon is going to get another overhaul where they, you know, redesign everything, because X and Y and Alpha and Omega ran on the same graphics engine. They used the same one and just redesigned things for the next game, which made it a little easier to make. Now, if Sun and Moon gets a new, complete overhaul, obviously they're going to have to put extra work in that. If they're using the same graphics engine from X and Y and Alpha and Omega, it would be really easy to add that back in and maybe add some more clothes. So again, this is a feature we'd like to see again. Everybody loved it. It would be great if that came back. It would be another great thing to make the game better. So that's the next one. Now the next ones I'm going to touch on are features that not a lot of people touch on to begin with. So the next one is the experience system. Now, I could get into a really long rant about this. The experience system maybe hasn't been the best throughout the first games. It works, obviously, but, some things could be tweaked upon. Pokemon in general has always encouraged you to train more than one guy, or maybe even two. They wanted you to have a full party of Pokemon. That's why they had your rival pick a type that was weak against you. That's why at the beginning of Black and White, they had a contest to see who could capture the most Pokemon. I think they might have even done it at the beginning of Diamond and Pearl. They want you to train multiple people to get the full experience of the game, and I don't blame them. But in the early games, that was pretty difficult. Once you were training one guy and he was getting to become a high level, it was just a lot easier to say, man, this guy's already powerful, let's just keep using him and get him stronger, rather than say, let's switch to someone weaker just to train him a bit. And I was like that when I first played Pokemon. My first games were Diamond and Pearl. I got into the Pokemon scene a little late. I was probably 12 or 13. That was my first game, and I chose Chimchar, and I only trained him for God knows how long before I decided to train someone else because I got stuck somewhere with him. But that's what Pokemon encourages you to do, and with the old experience system, it wasn't really possible to do that, and that was probably the only downside of it. But the way they went about fixing it is I completely don't like it. And it really started off in the 5th generation of games. I hate the experience system in the 5th generation, the Pokemon Black and White and Black and White 2. They made it so experience was dynamic based on what level you were on. If you were, say, 10 levels higher than what you were fighting, you'd get a lot less experience than if you were the same level, and that's also true if you're 10 levels under, you'd get a huge amount of experience. And that's great if you're training multiple guys, and because you get more experience, the farther apart under levels you are, he would level up really quickly. But I hated that because you couldn't get your Pokemon to be way ahead of the game. And that's something I loved doing when I played the early games. I love to take my time to overtrain my Pokemon, so by the time I'm ready to hit that gym or whatever he is, 10, 15, even 20 levels higher, and it felt so cool to have I worked really hard to get this super powerful Pokemon, just sweep their whole team with one move or whatever. That was awesome, and it is impossible to do that in the newer generation of games. And I tried it, if you want to go out and say you have a level 15 starter and you want to get him a lot stronger, and you go out and train against level 7 or so, or even lower Pokemon, wild Pokemon, you would only get 3, 4, or 5 experience points. That was absurd. The game was literally stopping you from getting farther ahead than it wanted you to be. So now, those Pokemon games, both Black and White and Black 2 and White 2, was like, we don't want your Pokemon to be a higher level than this point by the time you're at this point in the game. Whereas before, if you worked for it, you could have a Pokemon that was way farther than what was expected. And I thought that was really cool. They took that away in the 5th generation of games, and I hated it for that. In fact, I've only played Black and Black 2 once just for the sake of playing them. That's how bad I hated the experience system. Now, I go out sometimes and I'll train maybe 3 or 4 Pokemon to have it diverse, but I like doing it the old way, where I would work to have the older experience system where I get that lower level guy and slowly train him up. Not this if he's under leveled, he'll instantly become the level we need due to the vast amount of extra experience you get for an under leveled Pokemon. So, I didn't like that. I know some people do, but this is an opinion. This is an opinion video, and that's something I didn't like at all because of the reasons I stated. Now, I don't know if they decided that that wasn't a good way to go, because they changed it again in the 6th generation of games. And the way they did it, I was a little more tolerable, but I don't know. The way they did it in the 6th generation was kind of cheap, if you ask me. They made it so you have an experience share. And when you turn that on, your entire party Pokemon get half of the experience from the battle that your first Pokemon that battled was getting. And if you swapped out to another Pokemon, those two Pokemon would get the full amount of experience, and everybody else who didn't would get half. Now, and in order to make it so your Pokemon weren't completely OP, they nerfed how much experience you got in general. Now, they took away that dynamic range that changed how far apart levels you were by just replacing it with much less experience earned to balance out the fact that all your Pokemon were getting experience. So, and I ended up realizing this, when I was battling, I only used... Okay, when I played through my X game, I only used a single Pokemon. I can't remember what it was because I've trained so many. I had the experience on, and all my other guys were getting experience, but for some reason, I would train and train and train, and I could never get more than 5 levels ahead of who I was fighting currently. It's like, man, I just can't get ahead. And you know why? They nerfed the experience you got to balance out the fact that everybody's getting experience. Now, I didn't like this idea at all. In fact, I thought it was really cheap how you would never have to touch any of your other Pokemon again unless you needed them for type advantages, and they would be completely trained. Some people are like, oh yeah, now I can have a full team without really working for a full team, You didn't individually train each of those Pokemon. The experience share just automatically fed them that experience. And you wouldn't even have to look at your Pokemon, and they would be 20 levels higher with EVs and everything because the experience share also distributed EVs. It was... I didn't like that at all, and I wanted to turn it off and say, if they made it so they didn't nerf the experience to balance it out, which would be completely OP, I probably wouldn't have used it just for the sake of I should train all my guys, but obviously it's that mind attitude of if it's there, then you got to use it because it's a standard that everybody would be using. So I didn't like that at all. I miss the days of the old experience system where the last time they used it was in 4th generation. That simple experience system of you're getting this amount of XP for your guy. You can end up getting really far, really 10, even 20 levels ahead if you wanted to, or you could also do it where you're training individual guys. I want the old experience system to come back. Not what I saw in the 5th generation, not what I've seen in the 6th generation. The experience system I saw in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, that simple experience system they followed for a long time. I want to see that again in the new Sun and Moon games. I think that would be awesome. Now, unfortunately, I'm probably being too optimistic. They're probably not going to do it because they're trying to get Pokemon to appeal as much as they can to younger generation of kids, and they're going to do whatever they can to get more sales, so they might end up doing this experience share again, or God knows what they're going to do. I sure hope they don't come back with a 5th generation system of experience, because I'll hate the games then, no matter how good they are. Black and White 2 had an awesome story, and I'm going to touch on that later, but just because of the fact of that experience system, I just don't like the games. So, again, it's my opinion. Everybody has their own opinions, and if you think differently, I completely respect that. Obviously, this is an opinion video, as is everybody else's who posts these kind of videos. So, again, that's something I'd want to see, is the experience system in the older games come back. So the next thing I'd want to see come back is probably the VS Seeker. Now, this is an item that had been one of my favorite items in all the Pokemon games, was the VS Seeker. It was great. You could, if you wanted to train new guys, whatever, rebattle, you use the VS Seeker. I heard somewhere, I don't know if it's true, I can't confirm it, or I'm too lazy to confirm it, but I heard you get a little bit extra experience just for battling people over than wild Pokemon in general. You get a little higher percentage. I can't remember if that's true or not, but it was great to just run around with that VS Seeker, charge it, and know that you can rebattle people to train your guys. I love that, and I want that to come back. And they took it away in the newer games, and it like dropped the value of to keep playing after you've beaten the game. It dropped the incentive, and I hated that they took the VS Seeker away. I love that item so much, and I want it to come back. So that's all I'll say about that topic, or that point anyways, and we'll move on. That VS Seeker, I really do want to see that come back so you can rebattle people. Now the next one. Now these next points are a little more complicated. The next thing I want to see is a more diverse plot. If you look at X and Y, I don't know how much work they put into the storyline of it, but it was garbage. And I know I'm being blunt here, but that's really what I think of it. It's like they did all this work to rehaul the graphics engine. I don't know how much work was put into designing these 3D Pokemon where they're actually designing wireframes and making it look so good rather than using... See, all the games before it was as simple as using sprites. Even in the 5th generation when the sprites moved in battle, it wasn't too hard to do. I mean, everything was sprites, and suddenly you go into the 3DS Pokemon games, they've revamped everything. They scrapped everything, they revamped, they redesigned everything to make it 3D, and I think that is awesome. The newer games have never been better aesthetically wise. They look beautiful, they look great, but it's almost like they spent all their time revamping the game and not touching on anything else. The story was basically a watered-down version of the 4th generation of game, and it really was. You know, here's this team which had it was completely uncreative. Even the fact that they're still using teams at this point, I guess that's something they might always use. And we might see another team in Sun and Moon, Team Solar, Team Lunar, I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? They're fighting over getting the position of the sun, like maybe I can see it now. The plot's going to either be eternally daytime or eternally nighttime. I can already see it in my head, and there's 2 teams dedicated for it, and it could also be like a skin of Generation 3. Now, that's not even on my notes, that just came to my head, and I hope that doesn't happen, but I could see it happening, and I'm sure you could as well. But back to my point of the plot was, you got this team, you got this guy that wants to create a new world, so he captures the legendary for that game and uses its energy to create a new world. And I was like, man, there's not really much of a story here. It really didn't have it. I felt disappointed in general with the gameplay of X and Y. Now, if you look at Generation 5, I think Generation 5 had the best plot ever. It was so good. It was so in-depth. In my opinion, the 5th generation had the best plot. You know what? And so many things were so different in 5th generation. The Black 2 and White 2 and Black and White. The games were so bizarrely different. If you would have told me they weren't even made by Game Freak, I might have almost believed it. The story was so much more in depth. The design in general was so different. The experience system, I would have almost thought that had been made by another company. It just shows how different they can be and move away from their roots to create a vastly different feel on the game. And that game had a great story. I just hated the experience system. But again, in the 6th generation of games, X and Y, I thought the story was terrible. The way it flowed, I thought, was really bad. Here's this guy, you think he's good, then all of a sudden he's like, attention everyone, we're going to blow up the planet. It was literally as soon as that, and you literally just went to his hideout and stopped him. The story wasn't complex at all. I felt almost like there was no story. I felt like there was no reason to do what you were doing in the game, other than the fact to become to become champion. And the way after you've like saved the world, the way everybody acted afterwards, they acted like it was no big deal. Oh, you saved the world. Well, that's great. And they didn't really even care. Nobody did. And here's some kids that just stopped the world from massive destruction from this creep. Where's the police? Where's everybody else? And how did kids stop them? All this was running through my head as I recently replayed the games. I've probably beaten X 5 times, and I replay it to get different Pokemon to train. And on this last play, I was like, man, this story is such garbage. And again, I'm sorry for being blunt. This is an opinion piece, but that's how I really feel. So the point I'm trying to take away from this is I hope to see a better plot in the newer games. I want to see a diverse plot. I want there to be plot twists where you think, oh, they're going to do this, you're so sure because it's a common Pokemon game, and bam, something else happens you didn't expect. That would be awesome. To have an awesome plot like that would really, really make the game more respectable. So if you combine everything I said plus this point, oh, that would be awesome. It would make for such a great game. So I hope to see Game Freak really come back from their mistakes and make a really good plot that you really feel like you're really doing something in the game, that you're really fighting for something. So we'll move on to my next point here, is the difficulty. Now, maybe you've heard this before, maybe you haven't, I don't know, but I just felt like the difficulty in X and Y wasn't there, and maybe even so in the remakes of the third generation of games. I felt like there was, especially in X and Y, there was no difficulty. You could go through the entire game, I believe, if you wanted to, without using any HMs at all. They were optional. You could get extra cool items if you went off to use HMs. I mean, other than Surf. You had to use Surf, obviously, and Fly. But Fly's optional. It's just a convenience. But Cut, Rock Smash, Strength, any of those you really didn't have to use. And maybe that was a response from everybody being upset that you had to teach your Pokemon HMs and you couldn't just delete them. But that's been a core aspect that's always been with Pokemon. You teach your Pokemon HMs, even if it's an inconvenience, you still did it. It was a part of the game, and it made it a little more difficult, but they took that away. And that also goes to better routes in general. Using routes that you had to use HMs on. More complex routes. I've never seen easier routes than in X and Y. From city to city, it was so easy to move to the next one. There was no challenge at all. It was almost like they were literally just setting a straight path for you to walk. Look at the original path, the first path between the first city in X and Y to the second one. It was literally a straight line with no grass anywhere. What is that? And then the next one was almost as bad. I feel like all the routes in X and Y had no challenge at all to get to the next one. There was no challenge in the routes. You didn't have to use HMs. You didn't have rugged terrain that made you really think about where you were going. And even getting to the legendary, I just feel like I've seen better. I've seen more of a challenge in the newer games, and it's not in this game. X and Y didn't have any bit of a challenge. And that comes to another point with the difficulty, was exploring to find answers. Everything is just given to you what you need to do. You need to go here from a Holocaster message. You need to go here. You obviously need to just go right here. There was no real exploration where you had to go out and find the answer yourself, talk to people. That's the core thing of Pokemon. What do you do if you get stuck? You talk to people. And I remember back in the day when I was first playing Pokemon, I didn't have internet. And when I got stuck, tough. I didn't have internet. I had to figure it out myself. And that meant going around and talking to every person I met until I could find a way to go. And I think Pokemon's lost sight of that because since they're appealing to a younger generation of gamers, they've lost sight of that. They've made the game easier. They made the game easier for younger kids. Kids don't want a challenge these days, or else they get bored and do something else. So we have to make it so you don't get stuck. And yeah, they're going to get more sales that way from kids, from shallow fans, but the older generation that is in love with Pokemon, your main fans, it's disappointing to us because you've taken away any challenge the game had. It was so simple to go through X and Y. There was no challenge at all. Combined with everything I said, even most Pokemon battles aren't even that hard in the game. I mean, I just felt like it wasn't a hard game, honestly. So I'd like to see in the Sun and Moon some difficulty come back, some exploration, better routes, actually use the HMs and maybe invent some new ones on the way. That would be awesome if that would come back. And you know, it would be for such a good game. Now, these last 2 points I'm making, I'm going to wrap up, are just kind of cool things I personally would want to see. And one of them has to do with Mega Evolution. Now, I think I'm not really a big fan of Mega Evolution. I think if you're going to make Megas of Pokemon, I think you should just give them another evolution in general and leave it at that. Some Pokemon that could have a new evolution, you gave a Mega Evolution. And I'm not saying it's bad, I'm saying I would have done it differently, which comes to this point, I would like to see permanent Mega Evolutions. But you couldn't have a full team of them. Maybe you could only have one Pokemon do it. Like, I would say maybe it would work out where if you Mega Evolved a Pokemon a certain amount of times, it would mutate to become permanently Mega Evolved unless you took it away to give someone else that ability. So you could always have a permanently Mega Evolved Pokemon. Now, maybe within like 200 times you Mega Evolve, maybe 200, 100, 300, I don't know, whatever balances it out. If you Mega Evolve this many times, there's a counter, it would mutate to stay Mega. Now, Mega Evolution, Game Freak took advantage of that to fix some problems with some Pokemon I had in general, or maybe everybody had, was like, look at Venusaur. Nobody likes Bulbasaur out of the 3 original starters because it's weak. It's grass. It's got a ton of weaknesses. Nobody really plays Venusaur because of all the weaknesses it has. I love Venusaur's Mega Evolution where it gains thick fat. That, I was like, what? It has thick fat? It just took away 2 of its weaknesses to make it a more reasonable Pokemon. And I was like, well, shoot, I'll use Mega Venusaur then. I hate Venusaur, but Mega Venusaur, you just took away 2 of its weaknesses, and it's pretty OP. I'm going to use it now. And that's the thing. I will only use Venusaur only when it's Mega. So I think it's pointless to have a normal Venusaur if I'm only going to use it when it's Mega. So I was thinking, hey, maybe you can introduce permanent Mega Evolution. After so many times of Mega Evolving, it stays Mega Evolved, but you could only have one Pokemon that's Mega Evolved. And that's the same for, I'm just going to give one other example, Aggron. You know, Aggron is, what is it, Rock Steel? It's got a quad weakness to ground, a quad weakness to fighting. It's big OP Metal Dragon, basically. Well, it's not a dragon type, but it's big, it's OP, but a single Mach Punch or even a Mud Slap could be deadly to that thing because of quad weakness. It's absurd, and that's why I wouldn't use Aggron either. I hate using Pokemon that have a ton of weaknesses. You want to know a Pokemon that's never used? Exeggutor. All of its weaknesses. You want to know another that's never used? Shiftry. Too many weaknesses. I mean, Exeggutor has 8 weaknesses. That's like half of all the types there are. Chances are, someone by chance is going to have a weakness if you're using, or is going to have a move that's a weakness to you if you're using an Exeggutor. And I think weaknesses come down to it a lot. A lot of people like using Pokemon that have next to no weaknesses. It's only got 2 or 3. Okay, I'm going to use it, you know. That's why my favorite type is electric. I love electric Pokemon. They are only weak to ground, and they're pretty good. But that's another point. But permanent Mega Evolution, I'd love to see that, where you have a Pokemon you only love when it's Mega, and then you have the chance for it to permanently stay Mega Evolved. That would be awesome. So, and then my last point I'm going to make here is game rooms. This would be cool if they introduced a new feature where you go into an online room that's full of other live trainers, that their movement is updated live. Actual people are walking around in like maybe a room or maybe even an online city where you could walk up to people, hit A, try to battle them, trade, whatever. That would be cool. And maybe there'd be buildings or areas where if one person stands on one side of a little court and another stands on the other, they would battle, just random people battling, having fun, saying messages. But that's kind of getting into like a more MMO kind of style with live people walking around. But I think that would be really cool to add that feature. So, I'm not saying to add it. I'm just saying it would be cool if they did add it and, expand on that a bit. So, well, this video is getting pretty long. It's over half an hour. So I'm going to wrap it up here. And again, if Sun and Moon added all these features that I've mentioned in this video, it would make for such a great game. Seriously, I mean, the game would be one of the best Pokemon games out of all of them, in my opinion, if they did everything. So, again, thank you very much for watching this video, and if you've made it this far, I thank you for taking the time to listen to my opinion piece here, and leave a comment, I'd like you to leave a comment, explain your opinions, maybe you disagree in a way, let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to, respond and talk to you a bit. So, again, thank you very much. This is Graytech, and you have a wonderful day.